Very cool. Hi, everybody. Yeah. Excellent. All right. Nice to be here. Thanks for coming out and supporting indie cinema, everybody. It's really cool. I gotta say, this is the second time I've seen this, and it's really nice. It holds up nicely to a second viewing because I'm even more able to do what you suggested, which is just to feel it and not worry about where it's going. Really, just kind of let it come to me, you know. And I really appreciate that. So let's just kind of jump into it here before we get into any audience questions. Why don't you talk for a minute about what made you decide this is it? This is going to be my first feature, and this is what I'm going to start working on.
Yeah, I made a short called Prefigured that had a really great festival run and was purchased by Dust and went on YouTube and had 90,000 views. And then I started pitching to studios, and I think the notes I was getting back from studios and the whole process made me feel like I don't know how anybody gets anything done, right? And then I sat with Trevor one night having dinner, and I was like, let's just do something. I have this concept. I know where I want to shoot it. I know all of these things about myself that I want to inject into it, but I think it's going to be really horrifying and stressful, and we're not going to have a lot of time and money. And I thought he was going to tell me no, and he was like, sure. And I was like, oh shit. And then I think 6 months later, we were in the desert making a movie. But I think we just, I don't know, we didn't want to wait for somebody to tell us we should do something. I figured it would be nice to take a really big swing and just to try to put a foot out in the world. And then it really worked because it helped us get funding for our second feature. Hopefully that'll help get funding for the third one, and we'll just get progressively better as we go through the process.
Right. And you guys shot for how long?
7 days.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a very short amount of time for those of you who aren't
This is where
filmmakers.
everybody
And
gasps.
how did the script, the script to me obviously lends itself to manipulation in post, because it's very much, it has a poetry to it. But did you feel pretty locked? Was the script that you started with fairly secure, or did you have more just ideas of locations and scenes and things like that?
Yeah, the script felt pretty secure. I mean, the way it ends is exactly how it ends in the script. And I think we really wanted to avoid what David Lowery calls the third act crisis, right? Which is just like, get in, get out fast, and if people are like, oh, I wish I wanted more of your film, that's a really good place to stop. I think a lot of films really fall apart in the third act, and we knew realistically and logistically we wouldn't have time to do it. So I think the script, and Tasha kind of talked about this last night in our screening in Los Angeles, which is what was on the page, I think translated very well to what you see on screen. And there wasn't too much left out of it, right? I think in post with our editor, Matt Latham, who's here, did an incredible job of kind of manipulating this ongoing dread from the first scene all the way to the end. And we really hoped that would be succinct and really felt texturally, and hopefully it was.
Let me ask you about, I think your cast is magnificent. I've heard many smart directors talk in the past about how casting is a very large percentage of the job. So tell me how you found your cast.
So I knew I wanted to work with Hannah from when we first got connected many years ago, and she was really excited about this project because it's something so far outside of the typical things that she reads for, right? This film is woman-centric, but it's also written in kind of an androgynous way, right? Where it's not, they don't break their arms, they're not going through this crisis, it's like they're just strong characters that happen to be in a really strange position. And Jenna came on board a little bit later, courtesy of Hannah. And Jenna really was like, hey, I'm a stunt person. I want to be on a motorcycle. I want to be in the desert. Like, they were so excited about being in the wilderness. And they both got their motorcycle licenses for this project, which was really exciting. And then Tasha,
cool.
I've known Tasha for years, and she has such a specific texture when you meet her, and she really leaves an impression. And for this character, I really wanted to imbue a lot of the energy that I feel just being around you and translate it to being on screen. And what's really interesting about your scene in particular is in the script it comes in much later, but it was for us and Matt and I when we were editing this, we thought, wow, this is so it sets the tone very strong right up front. If you're not on board with what's happening in the beginning, you're sure as shit gonna have a really bad time for the rest of the film. And we really wanted to be confident with that, and your performance on this, to being able to fall into that. And plus, you're a former park ranger, so being out in the wilderness is natural to you. But we got very fortunate with those folks.
Yeah, that's really cool. Natasha, do you want to talk about that at all? Like how you, what you first thought when you read the script, and what it felt like to kind of jump in and go for it?
Yeah, I mean, the script, like it is, you brought up, you kind of said as you introduced this film, there's a poetry to it, and the script also felt quite poetic, and obviously it translates. But that's kind of my point, is that what was on the page really translated to this, which is incredible for a 7-day shoot, because that's so short. And to have a full script with, as you know, there's a lot happening, there's a lot of emotion happening, there's so much that we see. Hannah and Jenna are just incredible, and there's a lot of dialogue, that's a lot to accomplish in 7 days, but it really, even though it's in a slightly different order, it feels the same, it feels like the same poem. And I'm so happy for that, because that's what was so cool, just like, you said how Hannah felt about getting that script. Getting a script like this is magic. Like, we don't always get to make art, and we don't get to choose all the time. And to get to be able to make art like this is very special, and lucky for any performer, really.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything you want to add? Anything in particular that felt particularly notable about this project?
I hope you guys have questions for Justin, because we shot this movie in 7 days and it looks incredible.
Yeah.
So get your cues ready for Justin. No, I don't know. We're just very lucky to have been a part of this. I mean, do you have any thoughts in general just on the film, The Buildout? Yeah, we shouldn't be out here.
Why did you agree to shoot it?
Yeah, why did you agree to shoot The Buildout?
Well, Zishan and I worked together on his previous short, Prefigured. Was it 2018?
Yeah.
And I think we, became quick friends and kind of talked daily since then, basically. And then one day he was like, "Hey, I wrote this weird script. I think I might want to make it." And I read it, and I was like, "Yeah, that's weird. That'd be cool." And then like a month later, he was like, "We're gonna crowdfund it," and I was like, "Okay, sure." And then he did, and I was like, "I guess we're making this," and then we did.
It just comes together. Can you talk about the music a little bit? Both the score, which I think is really cool, and it's an original score.
Yeah, so the composer is this guy named Jack Bartman. He's from France, and it was really fascinating during that time period in my life, because I work a full-time career that's not film related at all. So I was working really gnarly days for my job, and then he's on France time, so I would stop that, get on FaceTime with him, then we would work through the score cues, and I'd be up till 3 or 4 in the morning, gonna get up to work at 8 a.m. So it was like I was living and breathing this project for so long, but he has such an interesting knack for diving into synths but not being redundant, and I think not leaning into a lot of like John Carpenter-esque tropes, which for those types of films work really great, but for us, we wanted to have a specific kind of drone all the way throughout the film that I thought was, hopefully we accomplished, and a lot of people love the score, which is great. And then the music that they're listening to in the car is my band, so it's like free licensing, they didn't have to pay anybody. And then at the end, the Emma Ruth Rendell song, I mean, an artist I've been listening to for many years, and we have a mutual friend, and she connected me to Emma. I sent Emma some stills, and she was like, "Oh yeah, here's my label." And that happened within like an hour and a half of me talking to her, which is incredible. So I think a really powerful song to end on, and it really substantiates the fact that it's a requiem for that friendship. And I think it's a really sad way, and I hope when the credits come up, people are like, "Oh fuck, I feel bad." I want people to feel bad at the end.
Thanks for the experience.
Hey, that's cool. It works. I wouldn't mind opening it up if people have any, if any of you all have questions out there. Yeah.
First of all, congratulations on this film. I'm really curious, when you're on the desert, like how strategically were you shot this thing, or were you using that as much, or did you kind of do some like improvisational almost filmmaking?
I don't know if everyone can hear, but that question was about how much was shot listed and what was, and how much was improvisational in terms of what you would shoot every day.
From what I remember, it was more like shooting the multiple formats was tricky and kind of new, and it was more like we kind of had to dedicate a certain amount of time to each camera because we would be kind of shooting towards each other. So we wanted to make sure we had clean angles, at least a couple of clean angles of each of them. So it was more like we knew we needed 45 minutes for them to do like a clean handy cam version without me being there. And then we would kind of know like, okay, we think we got it. And then, you know, it's all handheld, and most of the time I'm just kind of following them and reacting to them and not really trying to like, you know, make them hit any marks or anything. It's like we would do a couple wides and then I'd be like, we feel like we got it, and then we'd do like close-ups and then,
Yeah. We spent a lot of time on logistically figuring out how much time we wanted for a scene. So the shot list was very non-traditional as it relates to how we approached it. It was more like logistically, how much time do we literally have? We shot in November, so the sun, we were always chasing the sun. But the good thing about the desert is that you can point the camera in any direction. So we would find a geographical area thanks to our producer, Nick Thurkettle, who's sitting right there. And he would help us get, he would help us get permits for certain areas, and we would say, okay, we have 50 yards we can shoot in. And then we would shot list based off the geography rather than like writing it out and saying a wide, a master, a close-up, or extreme close-up.
And what is that camera that they're holding, that the camcorder or whatever?
Yeah, wait, we have to rewind a minute, because I don't know if we talked about this here. There are different cameras that are being used. Because you may have noticed there's more than one camera being used. So can we like rewind?
there's 3 cameras.
3 cameras.
Yeah, so there's the Sony Handycam, which is just like the traditional, you can go to Best Buy and buy it. There's the Sony Venice, which is our master kind of cinematic universe, and then there's the GoPros. And then we worked in pre-production with our editor, Matt, to get a visual language that was the same throughout all of them, right? We didn't want to change aspect ratios, we didn't want to change sound quality, we wanted it to feel as seamless as possible. And it was really a lifesaver for us logistically because we could shoot all 3 simultaneously. And if something was off in the master on the Sony Venice, we could cut into the Handycam or cut into the GoPro, and you see that happen a lot in the film. And for us, it was really the only way we could do something of this scope on this budget without having to do 15, 16, 17 days to get what we got in 7.
It's incredible to see as an audience member too, because you have this huge cinematic world that's like overwhelmingly beautiful. Oh, also there has to be a drone, right?
There was a drone.
4 cameras. But you have this like incredible, these big, beautiful shots that you have of the landscape, and these beautiful shots of both Hannah and Jenna and everyone, and then you get to go into this shaky world of the GoPro and of the camcorder. It's like absolutely incredible to be watching that and get to jump around, and for that to be so seamless is really like magic. Like it's actual like magic that happened with like a computer and stuff. It's like, that's not easy.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes the tone of the set matches like the tone of the film, and you wanted to torture people and make them sad again. So was that the desert feeling? Did you guys have like little, things to kind of keep up the energy?
So the question was everybody miserable on set because the film ends in miserable? I would.
It was, did you torture everyone?
Yeah, I did not torture anybody. I don't think so. I mean, a lot of these folks are working with me on my second film, so I didn't torture them that badly. But I do think that we had the benefit. So we shot out in Borrego Springs, and every day to and from set, we were brought out on a literal Vietnam era war rig that sat like 20 people. So we all jumped into one gigantic vehicle and drove out like 45 minutes into the desert.
Hold on, we didn't jump in. You had to like step on like different like sets of boxes because it was really tall with these huge tires. I mean, like it was legitimately an old war vehicle, like huge.
Yeah, retired Vietnam vehicle. And every day I had 45 minutes of bookend time with the casting crew, which I think helped us reset every single day and every single night, and it was incredibly helpful for morale, because it's not like people are getting in their individual cars and like being like, oh, I hated how this happened or that. We all had to be together like siblings for 7 days, and you have to make peace in those moments. And I remember there was one brutal overnight where I think my day was, with Trevor, was 3 a.m. to 8 p.m. Everybody else had a normal day, but it was brutally cold. We're in this open air vehicle, it's super silent, and then one of our PAs gets up and just gives us like an Independence Day style pep talk. And it totally changed the mood of the project, and everybody kind of came back together. And there were a lot of moments like that where other people stepped up to help lift the tone. And I don't think everybody was tortured and miserable, but I think there was, it's rough. And any film is rough. If you're in 4 walls with a ceiling, it's rough, let alone, in the middle of nowhere and it's 25 degrees out.
To your point though, we were, based on what Sishan just said, obviously about how we got there, we were actually in the middle of the desert. Like, we were out in Anza-Borrego. We were like, there was no civilization around. We couldn't like be like, oh, could somebody run and go get me a coffee? Like, that was not happening. We were really in the desert, and it was incredible to be there, and to be able to have that fabric to work with as an actor is very special. And it's like the opposite of torture, because you're so lucky. You don't have to be imagining where you are. You're actually there, and that's like such a gift as an actor to be able to be really in that desert space. It was really cool.
One of my favorite moments very quickly is maybe like the 3rd day, and there was like a beautiful sunset, and everybody just stopped what they were doing and just took photos for like 45 minutes, and they're just like fucking around, listening to music, taking pictures, and it was truly like a fundamental memory I'll carry with me forever. And you just don't get that when you're like in a studio space or you're on a traditional set. I mean, we were just like, we're in it, like looking at wild coyotes, and I mean, it was really beautiful.
Like camp.
Just like summer camp, yeah.
About like location and scouting and anything like that, had you been to that place before, or had you had an idea of where to go? Just because Southern California deserts, you can find a lot of them, so just an idea of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've been to a lot of deserts, you probably haven't been to this one. And then we really wanted to find a desert that looked like it wasn't Joshua Tree or Palm Springs, right? We wanted it to feel otherworldly. The dirt bike in there is my dirt bike. I've been riding in that desert many times in my life. Borrego Springs Film Festival is an incredible film festival and really indie film centric. And they took us out on an overland tour the first time I was there. And that's when I met Joe, who was our wildlife advisor, who had the Vietnam War rig. And he was like, yeah, I can help you make your movie. So the seed was planted in 2019. And then all these years later, working with Nick and a few other folks to figure out what parts of the state park we could actually shoot in. And then we went on a scout. That was, how many degrees, Trevor?
It was like 115. Yeah, it was insane. It was like in July.
Yeah, it was probably the worst my body has ever felt in my life. And I treated my body pretty terribly at points, but I was like baking. But yeah, we went on that scout and then just put a pin in everything and mapped out the drones. And it was a pretty arduous process. And we paid $11,000 to get that permit. And nobody ever showed up to make sure we were using it correctly, which is so frustrating.
I pointed out yesterday, if they hadn't done it, somebody definitely was gonna come and kick you out. Like, for sure.
Yes.
Kind of a silly question, but I couldn't help wondering when I watched it. Little fly crawling around your mind. Is that a happy accident in filming, or is it something that there's so many flies that you just wait for it to happen?
Yeah, this fly, he keeps coming up in all our screenings. He's a very special fly of mine. I mean, it's kind of funny in that scene. We were near that tent, and you saw in some of that camcorder footage in the tent, there's like banana peels and stuff like that. And I mean, if I were a fly out in that desert and I can smell banana, so like there were like a lot of flies in the tent to begin with. But also you'll notice my fly was a special fly. I feel really lucky. I knew the moment I like remember being like, whoa, a fly just landed on my lip. That's gonna be awesome. And I was like, as I was moving, I'm moving like really slow because I'm like, oh, he stays on me.
Problems
He
for not
did.
moving.
But there are flies all over that movie, and there's something really cool about, that happening naturally and then being obviously enhanced. We can hear the flies, that probably wasn't just recorded, that was probably put in there. So the flies were there, that was enhanced throughout the film, and there's something so cool and creepy about that throughout the entire film. You get this death feeling, you get this desolation feeling, you get this feeling that that's the only thing left to survive, and you get all these close-ups of the bugs, along the way, and even the dead bugs, like the dead scorpion, and there's something really cool about that. Even the gear that's whatever, it says fly on it. I don't know, there's something really cool about that coming together in this film. I don't remember flies in the script, but it sure seems like they were in the script.
No fly wrangler on set.
No fly wrangler.
No budget for that. Yeah.
With obviously the limited time shooting, and I would imagine that meant that you had limited footage that you ended up with. How much of that actually ended up in the final cut? What was the editing process like for you?
Like 150% of what we shot ended up in the film. I mean, Matt, who's sitting a few rows behind you, our editor, tremendous about watching footage and finding moments. My favorite part of the film is after Hannah's like, oh, you think I'm gonna kill you, and does this, and there's this really beautiful montage with voiceover, all created with extra footage that we found. And for me, it's my favorite moment because it's truly has this huge indie filmmaking stamp on it. And we use that voiceover for the trailer. None of that was in the script. And with 7 days, you are scraping the barrel to try to find things. You have to hit a certain minute mark to have a feature film. And once we got past that minute mark, we had 10, 15 minutes left after that. We were like, okay, now we have a moment to breathe. We can actually create the narrative that we want. But yeah, it was every single thing that we shot, we used for the most part.
Shoot B-roll, a lot of it. You'll use it all.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. Shoot beautiful plants and trees and bugs, and you'll use it.
I want to
Also,
ask a question.
there were all the cameras, so you're multiplying every minute on set that you would normally have with one camera, you're multiplying by 2, sometimes 3, probably mostly 2, but so you have all this really cool footage. It's it blows my mind. I don't know about you guys, but it blows my mind when I see the footage from that camcorder and from the GoPros. It's there's this one shot you have towards the end of Hannah in the camcorder, and I can't believe how crystal clear and beautiful that shot is on this big, huge screen. I'm just gonna lose my mind.
I have a question, which is
Take it away, Sean.
it's a two-parter, but the couple times on the way here to come to the screening tonight, people would find out that, oh, you're going to see this screening, and they always ask the same question, which is, what's the genre? The first part of the question is, do you have an answer for that? Do you have a genre that you feel describes the film?
No, not at all. I think people attribute it to paranormal or sometimes even sci-fi, but yeah, I don't think about anything genre.
I think that was kind of the second part. Is that an annoying question to even have to try to tackle as a filmmaker? That don't put me in a box, man.
No, listen, boxes are critical, and we used one to get on top of the war rig to get to set. They're helpful, and I think listen, we're building a lot of goodwill in this room because you are able to hear about the stories, and that's why we're so grateful to be screening in person with you. But the folks that are watching it at home, they're not going to know we shot in 7 days. They're going to think that we took 30 days, and they're going to think, what the fuck is this, right? So I think genres are really helpful because it at least gets us into a categorization, but for some people, this is scarier than a traditional horror film because they're so uneasy the entire time. So for those folks, we hope that it's branded as horror, but I think if I could say paranormal found footage as my own genre, that would be the closest thing I could get to. Cool.
It's also a beautiful friendship story. I don't know what genre that is.
Yes, over here.
I thought the concept of the thought form was really interesting and also very sinister. I was just wondering maybe where that came from.
You may be the only person in this room that actually knows what a thought form is, but has anybody ever had an imaginary friend growing up? Was that a thing for anybody? There's some really sad hands that raised them. You you don't need to be embarrassed by that, but if you had an imaginary friend growing up, that is a thought form. That's like the closest conceptualization that I can have, which is your emotion that you are placing